Hey everyone, welcome back to Fiction Flux. I'm thrilled to have you here as we dive into an exciting new fanfiction adventure. Today, we're going to explore a mind-blowing, what-if scenario. What if Monkey D. Luffy, our beloved pirate king, found himself lost in the world of My Hero Academia? Let's get started. Luffy found himself somewhere unrecognizable to him. At the moment he was standing on the roof of a very identifiable building, if you were to ask literally any hero aspiring teenager. More specifically, he was at the top of the UA High School in Japan. Man, how did I get here? The last thing Luffy remembers is exploring Egghead Island with Chopper, Jinbei and Bonnie. When all of a sudden his gaze was captured by a very unstable portal that practically screamed adventure. With nothing else on his mind, he ran head first into the portal, not hearing the shouts of worry from his crew. Now all he can see for miles around him are massive, tightly packed buildings made of glass and concrete. Strangely shaped blocks of metal speeding loudly along long black streets, and more people than he could care to count hurrying from one place to another. Crap, I shouldn't have run head first into that glowy thingy. He sighed, quickly refocusing. Nothing I can do about it now, besides, they'll be just fine without me. Just as the newly dubbed emperor was getting ready to jump down from the multi-story building, he hears the sound of a door opening to his left, and out walks two people. People would be a stretch, seeing as one of them was a mink. No, that's not right. It looked like a combination of a polar bear, a mouse and a dog. Luffy wasn't really sure what to make of him other than the fact that he lightly resembled Chopper. Not really, but Luffy wasn't good with faces anyway. The man that followed behind the mink looked like the business type, obviously in his late 40s, early 50s. Luffy didn't pay the old guy much attention, as he was rather plain looking but had a stern air about him. It seems Luffy caught them in the middle of a conversation. And as I was saying, Mr. Nezu, I truly believe my daughter will become a top hero, and that she deserves the best you I can offer, which is why I came here to hand in the recommendation letter. He trails off slowly when he notices the sudden arrival of a teenager in rather ratty attire by his standards. Oh my, it seems we have an unexpected guest. The mink chuckled. He seemed to deduce that this stranger, while unknown, was not hostile. May I inquire about your name? Said the snappily dressed mink, who apparently went by Nezu. The teen in front of the principal had a well-worn straw hat stuffed snugly on his head, his black hair trying to fight its way out past the straw. He had large, kind eyes and a curious expression, his face marked only by a small scar under his left eye. Other than his head, he had an elbow-length, red, flowing, unbuttoned shirt, a yellow sash tied around his torso, a pair of blue jorts, sandals, and a massive cross-shaped scar on his chest. I'm Monkey D. Luffy. The man who's going to become the king of the pirates, he announced with pride, hopping away from the edge of the building. Thanks to Nezu's quirk, he was quickly able to unravel everything the teen just said. After all, based on a person's introduction, you can find out a whole lot about them. Monkey D. Luffy, such a strange name. He's definitely not from around here. King of the Pirates. I have never heard of a title like that before, and the way he said it, full of confidence, it must be real to him, whatever being king of the pirates means. He also doesn't strike me as a criminal of some sort. Any villain worth his salt would have attacked or fled by now, unless he was an overconfident idiot. That huge scar on his chest is also perplexing. You would only see that type of scar on a veteran hero, or maybe a burn victim. Well, Mr. Monkey, that felt weirdly racist. Nezu stopped short as the teen interrupted. Luffy. Excuse me. Hey, I'm just saying I won't remember if you call me Monkey. Remembering people calling him Straw Hat was enough of a bother already. Very well, so Mr. Luffy, can you tell me what you're doing on the roof of my school? Not to mention how you got up here in the first place. UA wasn't exactly Fort Knox when it came to security, but it wasn't your average corner store either. And since the school was going to be bustling with new students in a week, it was worrisome that this teen found a way in. Because if he can get in, anyone can get it. I'm not doing anything, I just ran into this white round thing 'cause it looked fun and I ended up here. he said unhelpfully, peering at the mink. Do you know Chopper, by the way? You both look the same. Nezu tilted his head. A fun, white round thing, he chuckled. That's a new one. And to answer your other question, unless this Chopper character is an animal, I'm afraid I can't claim any relation to him. This object he's describing sounds awfully like a portal quirk, or God forbid a mechanical one. That would be 500 years too advanced for this day and age. Well, yeah, he is. Luffy claimed. What? An animal? Nezu questioned. Another animal experiment. How sad. Yeah, he's a reindeer and the doctor on my ship. He can turn super big or really fluffy sometimes, said Luffy, completely serious despite the absurdity of the statement. The old guy, who had been watching judgmentally the whole time, forcefully cleared his throat. Not to intrude on this lovely conversation, but what is your purpose here? This is an elite heroing school, not some playground where you can come to pass the time, he said sharply. Oh, I'm pretty sure I'm lost, Luffy confessed. Anyway, can you guys point me in the direction of an island called Egghead? My crew will be waiting for me there, he said with a hint of hope in his voice. Egghead? Inquired both men. Luffy put a finger to his temple. I think it was Egghead, you know? The big science-y island with lots of robots. It was times like these that Nami would come in handy. I can't say I have ever heard of, unfortunately for Nezu. His sentence was cut short by another unexpected guest soaring by. Finally Yaoyorozu, decided to show your face, eh? Spit the strange man. His eyes were wild, and it looked as though he hadn't bathed in weeks. The only mildly kept part about him were his large, green arm wings that flapped unsteadily in the air. Damn, really? At Yua? I thought I'd be safer here. Yaoyorozu cursed to himself, sweat beading on his temple as he locked eyes with the villain who stared at his expensive suit hungrily. He knew being the CEO of one of the top companies in Japan put a huge target on his back, but seriously? In the middle of the day? Luffy stared passively at the exchange. What do you want with me? Yaoyorozu questioned, shifting his feet as if he'd ever be able to get away in time should he decide to run. The villain cackled, nearly losing his hovering grip in the air. Is that a serious question? If I kidnap you, I'm sure your family will pay a pretty penny to get your rich ass back. Of course this had to happen without any heroes currently present. Rich, huh? Screwed is more like it. Luffy pointed at the hovering villain like a kid pointing at an airplane. Hey, old man, do you know this guy? He's kind of annoying. Luffy stared a little harder for a moment. And he's gonna fly away with you. If you didn't know Luffy, you might guess he was thinking ahead and following the conversation like a normal person. But he took a peek using future-sighted observation haki. Obviously. Yeah, I figured that out myself. Yaoyorozu swore under his breath. Principal Nezu, I hope you can help me. My quirk isn't really suited for combat. His quirk focused more heavily on being able to make impressively fast mathematical calculations which rivaled the modern calculator, which was definitely not effective in the current situation. Unfortunately, besides predicting your chances of being captured, I'm afraid I can't help. Nezu had his eyes locked on the maniacal villain as he started to clumsily fly towards Mr. Yaoyorozu, making his chances of being saved as low as 19.8%. Luffy's stomach grumbled. To Nezu's surprise, he seemed completely unbothered by the approaching danger. He hesitated, then, Hey, old guy, if I kick this guy's ass, can you please help me get back to my crew? His stomach complained louder. And give me some food, I'm starving. Yaoyorozu's eyes darted to the kid, noting his relaxed demeanor while his own heart pumped so hard he could feel it through his chest. If you can do something, do it already. I'll even give you a place to stay if you help, shouted Mr. Yaoyorozu as the villain began closing in fast. Normally he wouldn't invite a stranger to his mansion, but in the heat of the moment, he wasn't thinking straight. Yes, it's a deal. Well, at least now he has a place to stay until he finds a way back to his crew. Whenever that might be. For now, however. You're mine, Yaoyorozu, screeched the villain as he swung his feet forwards. his feet ripping through his dirty shoes to reveal massive, razor-sharp talons that made to claw into Yaoyorozu. Nezu watched starstruck at the almost concerningly bright smile that overtook Luffy's features as his arm stretched backwards, all the way to the edge of the building. Gamu Gamu no. The villain looked on in fear, mere inches from grabbing the old man, his attention diverted to the sudden appearance of a fist centimeters away from his face, and the devil's smile behind it. Pistol. The villain blacks out instantly as Luffy's fist makes devastating contact with his face, and he's sent flying into the streets below. Nezu can't even see him after a few seconds. Luffy's arm snaps back into place, and he turns to the two dumbfounded elders. Yes, he went flying, ha. Luffy turned to see their silly expressions and grinned. He's not coming back, so don't worry about it. Nezu nodded, a little scared. It wasn't often he met a stranger who could so effortlessly defeat a flying enemy, no less a teenager. Who was he? Yaoyorozu clutched a sweaty palm to his shirt, taking deep, calming breaths. If this kid hadn't been here, I would have been long gone by now. Thank you, gasped the businessman. Who would have thought that a kid in sandals would pack that much of a punch? Shishishi, don't mention it, old man. Luffy reassured Yaoyorozu, giving him his signature sunshine smile. You promised me food, didn't you? Now where is it? There was drool poking the corner of his mouth. Nezu let out a sigh of relief. You're in luck, Mr. Luffy. We actually have an excellent cook present in the cafeteria today. If you would follow me, please, as a token of my gratitude, said Nezu with a grateful smile. Losing such a big benefactor like Mr. Yaoyorozu to a no-name villain would not only leave quite a big dent in their funding, but it would also soil the school's reputation. Although, after this incident, he will be spending more budget on security. Sure, sounds delicious, Luffy grinned. The trio made their way to the cafeteria quietly before Nezu broke the silence. That's quite an interesting quirk you have, being able to elongate your arm. And with such accuracy nonetheless. Nezu was intrigued, after seeing him defeat a villain with such precision and brutality. This straw-hatted teen clearly had not only training, but experience. What's a quirk? Luffy questioned. Both men froze mid-step. You can't be serious. Mr. Yaoyorozu spun around. Did this kid live under a rock? Maybe you have a different name for it from where you come from. I was referring to your ability to stretch. Nezu clarified. Luffy was puzzling to say the least. Here in front of him was a teenager speaking fluent Japanese with a peculiar accent, wanting to become the supposed pirate king, not knowing what a quirk is despite it being a worldwide cultural fact, and with impeccable fighting skills. The more he finds out about this guy, the more of a mystery he becomes. Oh, I get it, I don't have a quirk is what you said. But I did eat the gum devil fruit and now I'm a rubber man. Luffy explained, tugging on his cheek and stretching it an arm's length out in demonstration. Completely oblivious to their uncomprehension. Are those similar? A devil fruit? Mr. Yaoyorozu doubted, too flabbergasted to notice his question. I've never heard of such a thing. Really? I must be super far from the Grand Line then, Luffy contemplated. Concern etched in his voice. Maybe it's a weird way of saying that he has a quirk. Nezu was stressing more and more with the strange terms this teen threw around as if it was the most common knowledge in the world. But he didn't let it show on his face. A quirk that turns your whole body into rubber seems rather peculiar, but the way you use it is extremely impressive, said Nezu, praising Luffy. The only way he can think of a rubber quirk being effective is if it was paired with ridiculous amounts of strength and a wild imagination. Thanks, little guy. Ace never thought my power was cool, but I proved him wrong, Luffy declared, remembering all the times Ace mocked him for gaining such a useless ability. Mr. Yaoyorozu cleared his throat. He seemed to like doing that a lot. As I was saying before getting so sidetracked, Mr. Nezu, I hope you will be accepting my letter of recommendation for my daughter, he said in an attempt to put the small principal back on track. Oh, of course, she will still be required to take the recommendation entrance exam. But I have no doubts that she will pass with flying colors. Nezu reassured. He had nearly forgotten that the whole reason Mr. Yaoyorozu was here was for his daughter's admittance in all the excitement. Entrance exam? For what? Luffy asked curiously. Nezu perked up. This building is a famous hero school, namely UA High. It's rather difficult to get into due to its high requirements. But this is where pro heroes train the next generation. The entrance exam is the first step to getting in. Nezu explained pridefully. Luffy's eyes lit up, and he balled his hands into fists of excitement. Awesome. I love superheroes. Nezu couldn't help but chuckle at the childish fascination. Luffy mellowed out. I would never be one though. He seemed almost appalled at the thought. Oh really? How strange. Why is that if you don't mind me asking? Nezu was puzzled. With Luffy's admirable strength and cheerful attitude, he was almost certain he was just another hero-aspiring teenager. Luffy grinned. I'm a pirate. Of course I can't be a hero. The two men didn't seem any less confused. Luffy figured he'd dumb it down for them. Look, say you have a piece of meat, right? A hero would share it with everyone, but a pirate would keep the meat all to himself. The pair shared a concerned look. Nezu, however, was more nervous. He's not wrong, but he doesn't have the full picture either, he mused. What are you talking about? While being generous is an aspect of heroes, you are missing the key principles that truly make them who they are. Mr. Yaoyorozu explained in hopes of educating him. Now Luffy was just looking at them like they were the stupid ones. Why would I share anything when I can just take it? Ugh, quit making me think so hard. I don't want to be a hero. Don't push me, old man. Luffy complained, causing both men to begin reevaluating what they knew about this guy. I'm not old. I have a name and it's Mr. Yuichi to you, and wait a second. Didn't you mention that you were a pirate? The CEO questioned nervously, was this kid being serious? Because from what he knew about good old-fashioned pirates, let's just say it doesn't paint a pretty picture. Luffy pointed a finger directly at Mr. Yuichi's nose, causing him to look down cross-eyed at it. Not just any pirate, but the man who's going to be the king of the pirates. Luffy clarified. The determination in his voice and the wideness of his smile evoked memories of All Might's own sure grin. And what do you mean by that? Nezu asked. The more Luffy spoke with such truth in his voice, the more his mind was amuck with theories on where this guy could possibly be from. He needed more info. It means that once I find the One Piece, I'll be the freest man in the whole world, said Luffy, completely seriously with a smirk on his lips. Huh. Well, I wish you good luck on your journey. Ah, we've arrived, Nezu responded as they finally entered the cafeteria. He was beginning to form a theory that would change the rules of the universe if he was right. And he really didn't like the current possibility of that situation. The cafeteria wasn't anything special, but it was larger than any canteen Luffy had ever seen before, each table having plush seating and enough space at each surface for every student to fit in comfortably with their friends. Luffy, however, couldn't care less. Following his nose, he made a beeline straight for the kitchen. Yahoo! Meat! Luffy launched himself over the counter, almost causing the food hero Lunch Rush to fall to the ground. Hey! Watch where you're going, kid. If you want food, you're a week too early, Lunch Rush shouted. Unfortunately, his statement fell on deaf ears as the Straw Hat Pirate was already ravaging the fridge. Lunch Rush was about 5 seconds from attacking the stranger before he heard the principal's tiny voice. Hey Lunch Rush, sorry for the intrusion, he's with me. Can you do me a favor and prepare him whatever he'd like? Although I'd assume it's meat. Nezu added under his breath. Oh, Principal Nezu, said Lunch Rush in surprise. It was a rare sight to see the principal at the cafeteria. He was sure Nezu lived off of tea alone. Of course, is this kid a potential student? Potential student, haha. If I see any more strangeness out of this kid, I'm going to go bald from hair loss if I'm right. Nezu was putting himself in a tizzy, something not lost on Luffy, but he remained focused on the food he was shoveling into his arms. Thank you, and maybe we shall see. Nezu responded, his mind elsewhere. Luffy dumped an armful of meat in front of the food hero. Hey Broccoli Head, make me some food with this. Luffy demanded. I have a name you know, responded Lunch Rush angrily. And put those back. Did nobody teach you manners? Luffy just laughed in response to Lunch Rush's question, causing all three adults to sweat drop. Him? Really? As a potential student? Mr. Yuichi asked incredulously. Lunch Rush went deeper into the kitchen to start preparing Luffy's meal, grumbling something about no-mannered brat. Well, if my theory is correct, then we need to start preparing right away, but it shouldn't be possible, so at the moment I'm not sure, said Nezu prudently. With the way all the evidence was pointing, he only needed a bit more to solidify his decision and begin forming a plan. About Luffy? Now that you mention it, I've been wondering about him as well. Mr. Yuichi was basically confirming what Nezu had thought all along. If we're thinking of the same thing, Mr. Nezu, Mr. Yuichi continued, we can simply confirm by asking him. Nezu seemed startled. He was impressed that Mr. Yuichi had managed to meet him on the same wavelength. He gestured for Yuichi to lean down so he could speak quietly. So you also suspect Mr. Luffy could be from another world? What? Mr. Yuichi shouted. Luffy and Lunch Rush gave the pair a side eye. He coughed semi-quietly into his arm to collect himself, waving their attention off, and leaned back down. Yuichi, an almost unnoticeable flush on his face, nodded in agreement. Why yes, of course, I was thinking the same thing. I was not thinking the same thing. I thought for sure he was mentally ill. He thought, turning his face away to hide his humiliation. Nezu sighed in relief. I'm so glad you think the same as I do. I was worried I was going crazy, haha. Mr. Yuichi bobbed his head up and down again, as if he had half a clue what the principal meant. Now that I know you feel the same, I'm much more comfortable finally forming a concrete plan, Nezu announced with a flourish. At this point Mr. Yuichi wasn't sure who was the crazy one, Luffy, the principal, or himself. Nezu was filled with excited apprehension. I mean, the possibilities alone that this new world could bring us are exciting, to say the least. Nezu murmured more so to himself than to others. I wonder what the people there are like, their technology, their customs. Oh sorry, I seem to be getting ahead of myself. Despite the fact that his exact origins are unknown, and the fact that he's called himself a pirate multiple times, he has extraordinary potential as a hero. Especially since you said you would be providing Mr. Luffy with a place to stay, Nezu reasoned. He was then dumbfounded at the facial expression Mr. Yuichi was giving him. Right, our deal, I had nearly forgotten. The CEO dragged his palm across his face with barely disguised disdain, causing the principal to sweat drop. With all the new revelations, it's hard to keep a clear head. Are you planning on going back on your deal? Asked Nezu. He hadn't thought the CEO was the type to go back on a promise. No, I can't go back on a deal I've made, no matter how much I might want to, said the middle-aged man, mildly aggravated. Even though it was only a verbal agreement. The pair made to sit down across from one another. A loud crash came from the kitchen. Namely Lunch Rush slamming a pan filled with various cuts of meat on the stove in frustration. All right, I get it. Just stop yelling, or I'm not giving you anything, hollered Lunch Rush from the kitchen, causing Luffy to immediately shut his mouth. But if he truly is from another world, how are you going to prepare the documents necessary for enrollment in this high school? Mr. Yuichi questioned, more so to break the silence while waiting for Luffy. I can simply pull some strings to expedite the document-making process, but I am going to need to inform him of all of this, and actually ask him if he even wants to be a hero. Nezu didn't want to take Luffy's ability to choose away from him. He has a gut feeling that would not go well if he tried. Mr. Yuichi nodded in agreement. I see, yes, well I do wonder how that could go. I can't imagine it being too difficult to convince him, he said, watching Luffy stretch his arms to take the plate full of hot meat right out of the cook's hands. Lunch Rush yelped in surprise. Thanks for the meat, broccoli head. He'd barely finished his sentence before he shoved the food into his mouth, bone and all. He looked at Lunch Rush expectantly. You have more right. I have a name, shouted Lunch Rush. At least he knows how to say thank you, the little brat. And no, there's no more for you. I'll have to mentally and physically prepare for the upcoming school year, if all of the students are like you. Luffy sighed in disappointment, patting his stomach. I guess this will hold me off for the next hour. Mr. Luffy, now that you are finished, please come with me and Mr. Yaoyorozu to my office. I have some things I want to discuss with you. Nezu mentioned. Okay, little bear, I don't want to stay here too long though, Luffy agreed. Nezu quirked an eyebrow at the strange nickname. The walk to the office was relatively quiet, only interrupted by Luffy oohing and awing out the windows at anything he found interesting, which was pretty much everything. Nezu opened the door to his office. Now that we are here, please take a seat, the both of you, said Nezu, making his way behind the desk which completely obstructed him from view until he jumped on his office chair. Would anybody like some tea? He asked, preparing some for himself. I'm good. And no, thank you, was the unanimous response. All right. He placed a tea bag in a cup full of hot water and set it aside. Now, Mr. Luffy, there's no way to sugarcoat this, but I am confident that you are from an entirely separate world, and with no feasible way to return to it. Nezu figured the quicker he got this over with, the better. Luffy, who had been joyfully kicking his feet and staring out the window in awe, stilled. Wait. What do you mean? There was a subtle fear in his voice, nearly undetectable. He wasn't sure what the principal was implying yet, but he didn't like it. I mean that, as of right now, there's no way we can get you back to your crew. He clarified. No, it's fine, I'll just get a boat and sail there. Luffy wasn't seeing the issue. That won't be possible. Luffy glared. Why? Are you saying you won't let me? He wasn't having it. No, I'm trying to say that there is nothing anyone can do to get you back to your world at the moment. Asterisk world. What the hell is he talking about? Luffy, I'm not trying to stop you. Oh dear, Nezu thought. I'm not sure how to phrase this in a way he can understand, and he seems upset. Yuichi placed a hand on Luffy's shoulder. He's saying that right now, your crew is somewhere that our world has zero access to. Oh. Wait, why not? You promised you'd help me, old guy, Luffy exclaimed angrily. And we plan to stick by that promise. If you take a second to calm down, we can explain the situation in full. Luffy didn't like it, but he took a second or two to cool his temper regardless. Nezu sighed and continued. Right now, we don't have a way to get you back, but what I can promise you is that we can get you a place to stay until we are able to get you home. And until then you need to be patient. Luffy puffed out his cheeks. But I want to get home now. I don't want to be stuck here, it's all smelly and gray, he whined impatiently. My crew is gonna worry about me if I don't get back fast, please. Watch your tone, young man, Yuichi warned, his voice stern. This is the principal of the school, you can't go around complain. Don't tell me what to do, idiot. Luffy, doing a complete 180 and yelling at Yuichi. You little brat, Yuichi yelled back at Luffy, his temper rising, bumping forehead to forehead. You should show some respect to your elders. I don't care that you're old. Why should I respect you when you can't even get me home? Luffy complained. Oof, that hit a nerve. Don't call me old, Yuichi said angrily as he punched Luffy across the face. Hey, what was that for? You said it first, not me. Luffy nursed his cheek with a frustrated pout. Oh boy, we're getting nowhere with this. Nezu sighed and shook his head. Listen, Mr. Luffy, we know it must be hard to be away from your crew. But for now, you'll be staying with the Yaoyorozus and joining the hero program at this school. And do try to get along with him. Luffy and Mr. Yuichi stared at each other for a second, before both huffed and turned away, muttering a final, fine. Luffy then seemed to hear the second part of his situation. Wait, I don't want to become a hero. Didn't I tell you that already? And I've never even been to school. That wasn't surprising to either man. Mr. Yuichi sighed in mild frustration. You don't have to become a hero. Having you enroll in the school is just a way to keep tabs on you. Luffy thought about it for an almost embarrassingly long time before coming to a reluctant decision. Well, okay, it's not like I have any better options. It's only temporary and I'll see my crew again for sure. But I am not a hero, and you better believe I'm not gonna share my meat. Excellent. We still have to make the proper documents, and you have to actually get accepted, because as much as I wish, I can't just have someone skip the entrance exam. Nezu prepared a pen and notepad. What about the written exam? I heard that it's as tough as the practical one, and he is clearly no scholar. Mr. Yuichi inquired. Don't worry about that, it's nothing a little earpiece can't solve. Nezu tapped his ear. Mr. Yuichi was not amused. Now for the questions. Nezu cleared his throat, having prepared the questions needed for enrollment. Your full name, please. Monkey D. Luffy. What does the D stand for? It was very unusual to have a one-letter middle name. I don't know, I just have it. All right. Nezu dropped it. Next, your family. Parents, siblings. I have an older brother named Sabo. My dad's Monkey D. Dragon. And I don't have a mom. Okay, Dragon. Sabo, wait. You don't have a mother? Nezu questioned delicately. Maybe? I thought I didn't have a dad or brother 2 years ago, but I do, so? I don't know for sure. I see, I'll put you down as having one parent and sibling then. Said Nezu, getting on to the next question. How old are you? I'm 19. Luffy did some quick math for that one. He hadn't celebrated his birthday during those 2 years training with Rayleigh. He only knew his age because he left his island at 17, and reunited with his crew 2 years later. Yuichi appeared shocked. No way. He's an adult. That's no problem. I suppose you'll just have to get used to being around students a few years younger. But if they ask, just say that you're a bit late to starting high school. Got that? Sure. Luffy agreed, picking his nose. Nezu had no faith he remembered a word that he said. Blood type? Nezu asked with low to zero hopes of getting an actual answer. F. Luffy wouldn't forget the moment he asked Jinbei to be his crewmate. We don't have that blood type. I suppose it'd be unreasonable to think someone from another universe have the same blood. It would be fatal if we gave you the wrong blood type, so I'll just put unknown instead. Hopefully you don't get into any big fights. Nezu chuckled to himself. Luffy didn't care. Place of residence, Nezu thought aloud. I suppose the Yaoyorozu mansion will suffice, he asked the drowsy man. Yes, of course, Mr. Yuichi yawned. Wait, what was the question? Moving on. Nezu smirked. Luffy giggled at his antics. A few questions later. Quirk. I supposed I'll just write rubber body. Nezu auto-completed. Oh yeah, what is that? I'm pretty sure I asked before. Luffy questioned with curiosity, munching on the principal's reserve cookies. Oh yes, Mr. Yuichi and I haven't responded, have we? Nezu's words fell on deaf ears. Yuichi was already entering his REM cycle. Well, quirks are an ability that almost every person is born with. These abilities can range anywhere from making fingers longer to reversing back time. I see, so it's a mystery ability. They faintly reminded Luffy of devil fruits. Weirdly enough, you're not wrong. Nezu moved on to the next question, while the CEO was snoring like a baby. 1 hour later. That concludes the interview. Finally. The rubber man shouted partly in jubilation and partly to wake up the CEO for his reaction. I'm awake. Mr. Yuichi awakened suddenly, nearly falling out of his chair and giving Luffy a nice laugh. He grumbled. He was having such a nice dream as well. Well, this has been interesting to say the least. Nezu hung up on the phone he had used to call the authorities. I have alerted the police of the unconscious villain you subdued, leaving out the fact that you used your quote-unquote quirk since it's highly illegal. And remember what we talked about, Mr. Luffy. Yeah, if anybody asks, my quirk is rubber, I know. I still think it's stupid I could get in trouble for quirk things when I don't even have one. Dumb government. Luffy grumbled. Nezu had spent half an hour drilling this notion, and a few others, into Luffy's thick rubber skull. Good, I'll be keeping this document to myself. And when the copy arrives I'll send it to Mr. Yuichi via the mail service. It's a beautiful day and we've finished up here, so I wish you adieu. Nezu then proceeded to drink his 8th cup of tea. Bye little bear, Luffy said with an excited wave exiting the room. He was thrilled to finally explore the world he'd been staring at through the window. Goodbye Mr. Nezu, thank you for your time. Mr. Yuichi closed the door behind him. Leaving, however, triggered his memory. Drat. I totally forgot to tell my driver that I would be spending extra time here. How long has it been? He checked the time with the watch on his wrist. 3 hours. I spent most of that time sleeping. Oh my, the HR department is gonna tear me a new one. I was supposed to pass by the office today and approve some important documents. The old man's headache was just getting worse. The pair exited the building, passing a skeletal man with blonde hair on the way out. Luffy took a deep breath, trying to smell the salty air from the ocean he was so fond of, only to be disappointed as he was instead hit by the harsh burn of cigarettes and gasoline. It's only for a little while. Luffy focused. So where's your house, old man? Luffy questioned. Is it far? He hoped it was. He wanted to see more of this place. No. Well, yes. It really just depends on the traffic today. I have a personal driver I neglected for much too long, hopefully still waiting for me in the parking lot, Mr. Yuichi yawned. And I have to take care of this kid adult apparently. Oh well, I suppose the mansion is going to get a little livelier if it's still standing by the end of the week. This is it for today. Folks, I hope you enjoyed the twist on this epic journey. Don't forget to drop your thoughts in the chat box below. I'm eager to hear what you think. And, of course, stay tuned for the next episode where the adventure continues. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.